In the scorching desert of ancient Canaan, a woman stepped into history with sharp insight and fierce faith, shaping the destiny of 2 generations. Rebekah, often overlooked among biblical women, has an untold story that testifies to grace and courage. Have you ever wondered, how can an ordinary woman alter the course of a sacred promise? Join us to explore Rebekah's dramatic journey, where faith faces trials and wisdom navigates through darkness. This is the untold tale of a mother, a wife, and a spiritual warrior. Hit subscribe to catch more inspiring stories like this. Under Haran's fiery red sky, where the sun scorched golden sandfields, Rebekah grew up in a small village pulsing around its well and fireside tales. Daughter of a modest family, she held no power or fame, yet her heart burned with a yearning for something greater, a promise beyond her homeland's worn paths. As a biblical woman, Rebekah's beauty lay not only in her delicate features, but in her sharp wisdom, a keen mind that pierced human hearts, and a latent courage, like embers awaiting their blaze. In the harsh desert world where men ruled and women were often forgotten, Rebekah learned to stand firm, wielding generosity and faith to shape her destiny. Daily, she walked to the village well, a heavy clay jug on her shoulder, barefoot steps marking hot sand. The well was more than a lifeline. It was a meeting place where stories were swapped and fates sealed. One afternoon, as sunset gilded the earth, strangers appeared, dust caking their cloaks, camels groaning from a long trek. Their leader, Abraham's aged servant, bore a sacred mission: to find a wife for Isaac, Abraham's son, tasked with carrying God's promise to Abraham. The vast desert, where winds spun sand into tiny whirlwinds, became the stage for a pivotal moment where Rebekah's untold story began. The servant knelt by the well, trembling hands raised in prayer. He sought a clear sign from God. The woman who not only offered him water, but volunteered to water his entire camel train, a grueling task requiring immense strength and extraordinary kindness, would be the chosen one. Rebekah approached, her smile warm as sunlight cutting through the stifling heat. She dipped her jug, drawing clear water, and offered it to the stranger with natural sincerity. But she didn't stop there. Seeing the parched camels, she silently returned to the well, drawing jug after jug, filling troughs until every beast was sated. Each step, each drop of sweat on the sand, testified to her faith, not in words but in deeds. This wasn't mere kindness, it was a mark of grace. A sacred moment when God placed his hand on Rebekah, choosing her for a grand mission. The servant watched, his eyes lighting up as if he'd found a rare gem. He gave her gold and silver gifts, but Rebekah wasn't swayed by wealth. She listened to his tale of Abraham, Isaac, and distant Canaan, where God promised a great nation. Yet the first challenge loomed, like a cloud dimming the sun. Rebekah faced a fateful crossroads. Would she dare leave her family, her familiar village, and a safe life to follow a stranger to a far-off land? The decision was daunting. In that era, a woman leaving home risked everything: honor, protection, future. Her loving family couldn't shield her in Canaan. But Rebekah didn't waver long. In her heart, divine justice whispered, urging her forward. She met the servant's gaze, nodded, and spoke her consent, a small vow carrying the weight of a nation. As Rebekah packed, her heart wove fear with hope. She didn't know Isaac, whether he'd accept her or if Canaan was her true home. But her redemption lay in this courage to step forward despite a shrouded path. She left Haran, leaving her mother's tears and father's blessings, carrying faith like a torch through the dark desert. Rebekah's journey wasn't just a trek through dust. It was the first step in a timeless lesson. Sometimes answering God's call means leaving the familiar, embracing the unknown, and trusting grace to light the way. When Rebekah set foot in Canaan, the promised land stretched out before her like a harsh painting where barren hills mingled with faintly green valleys. Isaac, her future husband, stood there, his demeanor calm, yet his eyes revealing the weight of the sacred promise passed down from his father, Abraham. As a woman of the Bible, Rebekah carried within her a fierce faith. In the moment she met Isaac, her heart trembled with hope. Their marriage began with tenderness, with afternoons by the tent, talking about God's promise, about a nation that would arise from their lineage. But that joy did not last long. A challenge loomed larger, like a dark cloud obscuring the sun. Rebekah could not conceive. In ancient Canaanite culture, where a woman's worth was often measured by her ability to bear children, this pain was not just a personal wound, but a public humiliation, a cruel whisper from those around her that perhaps she was unworthy of the sacred promise. In the long nights within their simple tent, Rebekah knelt on the earthen floor, her hands clasped tightly, her prayers pouring out like streams of tears. She felt God's presence, close yet distant, as if he were testing her courage. As a woman of the Bible, she was no stranger to divine justice. But God's silence through those endless years made her heart tremble. Was she truly the chosen one? Had her journey, leaving Haran and sacrificing everything to come here, been a mistake? Isaac, with his deep love, knelt beside her, his low voice resonating in the darkness, pleading for God's mercy. His patience was a comfort, but it could not fully soothe the ache in Rebekah's heart. She looked at the other women in the tribe, those who held their children in their arms, and wondered if God's grace was still meant for her. Then one day, like light tearing through the night, redemption came. After years of waiting, Rebekah felt life growing within her. Not one, but two children. Joy erupted in her heart, like a flame blazing after a cold wind. Isaac held her hand, his eyes shining with restored faith. The tribe rejoiced, and the whispers of doubt gradually faded. But that happiness was short-lived. A new conflict, deeper still, began to creep into Rebekah's mind. The two children in her womb were constantly struggling, their movements so fierce that they caused her pain, as if they were vying for dominance even before birth. The physical pain mingled with spiritual unease. Rebekah sensed something greater, as if the fate of an entire nation was being decided within her very body. In her agony, she lifted her face to the heavens, her voice trembling yet resolute, crying out to God, "If this is so, why am I here?" God answered not with a thunderous voice, but through a dream filled with visions. In that dream, Rebekah saw two nations, two destinies, and heard a clear prophecy. Two nations are in your womb, and the older shall serve the younger. This prophecy was the untold story of Rebekah's mission, but also a burden upon her shoulders. It not only confirmed that she was part of a divine plan, but also placed her in a challenging position. How could she fulfill God's will in a world full of injustice and prejudice? When Esau and Jacob were born, the differences between the brothers became increasingly apparent. Esau, the firstborn, strong and full of vitality, was Isaac's pride. He loved hunting, bringing back trophies that lit up the tent. Isaac, with a father's love, placed all his hopes in Esau, believing he would be the heir to the promise. But Rebekah, with her sharp wisdom, saw what Isaac could not. Jacob, the younger son, quiet and profound, carried within him the spiritual sensitivity she recognized in herself. In quiet moments by the tent, as Jacob listened to her stories of God, Rebekah sensed that he, not Esau, was the one chosen by God. The prophecy echoed in her mind, but it also ignited a fierce inner conflict. In Canaan's patriarchal society, where the firstborn son was always favored, how could she protect God's will without causing a rift in her family? How could she honor divine justice without being seen as betraying Isaac, the husband she loved, or Esau, the son she had borne? Rebekah stood at the crossroads of faith and duty. Each night she prayed, asking God for the wisdom to guide her through this storm. She knew her choices would not only affect her family, but also the lineage of the promise. The modern relevance of this story reminds us that sometimes courage demands we face heart-wrenching decisions, where loyalty to God may conflict with love for those closest to us. Rebekah, with a heart full of grace, began preparing for a journey she knew would be fraught with risks. But it was the only path to protect the prophecy and shape the destiny of God's chosen nation. Rebekah was not a woman who stood still before fate. The prophecy about her two sons, that the older shall serve the younger, was not just a promise, but a blazing fire in her soul, urging her to act. As a woman of the Bible, Rebekah carried within her sharp wisdom and unwavering courage. She understood that Jacob, her quiet younger son, was the one chosen by God to carry forward the sacred promise, even though the world around her saw only Esau, the strong firstborn, as a radiant light overshadowing everything else. Through the years of raising her sons, Rebekah quietly guided Jacob, not with grandiose lessons, but through stories of Abraham's faith, God's promise, and the responsibility of a spiritual leader. She taught him to listen for God's voice in the stillness, to find meaning in the smallest things, and to stand firm against inevitable trials. But the true opportunity to shape destiny came at an unexpected moment. Isaac, now old and frail, his eyes dimmed by time, prepared to bestow the blessing upon Esau, the sacred, irrevocable blessing meant for the heir of God's promise. In their simple tent amidst the arid Canaan landscape, Rebekah overheard Isaac's plan. Her heart clenched. If Esau received the blessing, the prophecy she had carried since her pregnancy would crumble like desert dust. This was the moment when Rebekah's untold story became a dramatic journey, where grace and divine justice demanded she rise, even if the cost might be everything. Rebekah did not act rashly. With the wisdom of a mother and the keenness of a spiritual warrior, she devised a bold plan. Jacob would impersonate Esau to receive the blessing from his father. The plan was not only daring, but fraught with peril. Isaac, though aged, was still a discerning father, and Esau was unmistakable with his robust frame, resonant voice, and the scent of the wild fields. If discovered, Jacob could be cursed instead of blessed, and Rebekah would be branded as a betrayer. not only to Isaac but to the entire tribe. Yet her faith was stronger than her fear. She trusted that God, who had given the prophecy, would guide her through this darkness. In the humble tent, Rebekah set to work with the precision of a weaver, each thread carefully placed to create a flawless tapestry. She took Esau's cloak, still carrying the scent of animal hide and dry grass, and draped it over Jacob. To conceal his smooth hands, she wrapped them in goat skin, mimicking the roughness of his brother's skin. She went to the kitchen, preparing the savory game dish Isaac loved, its rich aroma wafting like an invitation. Every action of Rebekah was infused with grace, as if God's hand were guiding her step by step, breath by breath. She looked at Jacob, her gaze resolute yet tinged with worry, and told him she would bear the consequences if the plan failed. That promise was not just a mother's protection, but a testament to her courage, ready to sacrifice her honor to uphold God's will. When Jacob entered Isaac's tent, the air was taut, like a harp string stretched to its limit. Rebekah stood outside, her hands clenched, her heart pounding like a war drum. She prayed not with words, but with her entire soul, pleading for divine justice to prevail. Each second stretched like a lifetime. She imagined Isaac with trembling hands, placing them on Jacob, uttering the blessing that would shape the destiny of a nation. And then Jacob emerged, his eyes alight with a mix of joy and fear. The blessing was his. Rebekah exhaled, but the journey lasted only a moment. Esau returned from the fields, discovered the deception, and his rage erupted like a fire consuming everything. He vowed to kill Jacob, and the tent, once a place of love, became a battlefield of fractured bonds. Rebekah did not falter. With the wisdom that had guided her through countless trials, she acted swiftly to protect Jacob. She urged him to flee to Haran where her family lived, promising that time would soothe Esau's anger. She arranged everything from provisions to an explanation for Isaac, ensuring Jacob could leave safely. In her eyes, as she bid him farewell, there was both a mother's love and the pain of sacrifice. She knew she might never see Jacob again, but her redemption lay in the faith that she had done God's will. The modern relevance of this story reminds us that sometimes courage demands we make painful decisions, not for personal gain, but for a greater purpose. Rebekah, with a heart full of faith, laid the foundation for Israel's destiny, even at the cost of the family she cherished. The deception Rebekah wove, though born of faith and wisdom, shook the very foundation of her family. The moment Esau stepped into the tent, carrying the scent of the fields and the eager anticipation of receiving his father's blessing, only to discover Jacob had taken his place, his fury erupted like a wildfire on the parched desert. Esau's cries echoed through the tent, a sound not just of anger, but of the raw pain of betrayal. He confronted Rebekah, his eyes sharp as knives, questioning the mother who had chosen his younger brother over him. As a woman of the Bible, Rebekah stood there, her heart shattered, yet her face unwavering. She felt the fracturing of her family, the jagged shards of love and trust she had sacrificed to protect the prophecy. This was her greatest trial, accepting the loss of Esau's love, the firstborn son she had once held in her arms, to uphold divine justice and God's promise. Rebekah offered no defense. She did not try to explain or apologize, knowing words would be meaningless before Esau's rage. Instead, she silently bore the pain, like a mother embracing her own cross. In her eyes, there was the steadfastness of courage, but also unshed tears hidden deep within her soul. She believed redemption would come, not for her alone, but for the greater promise she had devoted her life to safeguarding. Yet the cost of her actions was heavier than she had imagined. Esau, in his anguish, vowed to kill Jacob, and Isaac, though still loving Rebekah, looked at her with eyes tinged with disappointment and doubt. The tent, once a place of warm meals and laughter, now felt cold as a tomb, where familial bonds lay buried beneath the weight of the prophecy. In her darkest moment, when Rebekah felt utterly alone in the desert of her sacrifice, a sudden light pierced the gloom, like dawn breaking through the night. Jacob, on his flight to Haran, paused in a desolate place. In a dream, he saw a ladder stretching from earth to heaven, with angels ascending and descending, and God appeared, affirming that he was the heir to the promise. "I will be with you," God declared, words that were not only for Jacob, but also an indirect comfort to Rebekah. This was the untold story of divine intervention, a clear sign that God's grace had validated her choice. Rebekah's faith, though tested by fire, had not been misplaced. She had wagered everything, her honor, her family, her love, on the prophecy, and now God confirmed that the path she had chosen was true. But this redemption did not erase the pain. Rebekah never saw Jacob again. He left Canaan carrying the blessing, but also an eternal separation from the mother who had sacrificed everything for him. Rebekah lived her final days in silence, in a tent now devoid of her son's laughter. She sought neither recognition from the tribe nor forgiveness from Esau. She carried the pain of a mother, but also a quiet peace, knowing she had fulfilled her mission. Her courage, though judged harshly by history, shaped the destiny of a nation. Jacob, through his own trials, became the patriarch of Israel, the father of the 12 tribes, fulfilling the promise God gave to Abraham. Esau, though stripped of the sacred blessing, was not abandoned by God. He found his own path, building a family and a territory, proof that divine justice is not punishment, but a fair arrangement for each soul. Rebekah, though she did not live to see her sons reconcile, planted the seeds for their futures through her painful but necessary decisions. Her wisdom lay in acting not for personal gain, but for a greater plan, one that stretched beyond her own vision. The modern relevance of this story is a profound reminder for us today. Sometimes courage demands we make difficult, even heartbreaking choices to protect what is right. At times, like Rebekah, we must sacrifice cherished relationships, face misunderstanding, or embrace loneliness to remain faithful to our beliefs. Rebekah's story teaches that God's grace does not always come in moments of joy, but sometimes hides within the harshest trials. She reminds us that every faith-driven decision holds the power to transform not only our own lives, but also the generations to come. Rebekah, with all her flaws and triumphs, is a vivid testament that women of the Bible were not mere shadows, but spiritual warriors who shaped history through wisdom and divine justice. She left a legacy not of fame, but of silent sacrifice, a legacy that still echoes in the hearts of those who dare to believe and act for something greater than themselves. The story of Rebekah does not end with applause or dazzling glory. It concludes in silence in a simple tent amidst the arid expanse of Canaan, where the woman who once crossed deserts with fierce faith now lives her final days in quiet solitude. Rebekah sacrificed everything: Esau's love, Isaac's trust, and the chance to hold Jacob again, to protect the sacred promise God placed in her heart. As a woman of the Bible, she sought neither fame nor recognition. Instead, she chose the path of grace, a path fraught with thorns, but radiant with the light of divine justice. Her journey is proof that redemption does not always come in joy, but is sometimes found in the most painful sacrifices. Rebekah, with her sharp wisdom and unshakable courage, shaped the destiny of a nation. Jacob, the son she protected at all costs, became the patriarch of Israel, the father of the 12 tribes, fulfilling the promise God gave to Abraham. Esau, though deprived of the sacred blessing, was not forsaken. He forged his own path, building a family and a territory, a testament that divine justice excludes no one, but opens different roads for each. Yet Rebekah did not live to witness these outcomes. She left this world in silence, carrying the pain of a mother and the faith that she had done right. Her legacy lies not in songs of praise, but in the generations that followed, those who carry the bloodline of the promise. As a woman of the Bible, Rebekah teaches us that faith is not an easy road. It demands patience through years of silence, courage to face heart-wrenching choices, and wisdom to see God's greater plan when those around us see only failure. She reminds us that even in darkness, when families fracture and hope seems to fade, God works through those who dare to stand. Rebekah's actions, though judged harshly by history, are an untold story of the strength of an ordinary woman who altered the course of history by trusting and acting on God's will. The modern relevance of this story resonates within each of us. In today's world, we often face difficult crossroads where courage requires us to make choices that others may not approve. It might be standing against injustice at work, defending truth in a world full of lies, or sacrificing cherished relationships to pursue what is right. Rebekah reminds us that such choices, though painful, are never meaningless. They are the stones laid for a greater future, even if we do not live to see the results. God's grace works through those moments, transforming personal sacrifices into miracles for entire communities. Rebekah's story is a call to live with wisdom and divine justice. She did not act for personal gain, but out of faith in a plan far beyond her own vision. In a modern world where we are easily swept up in short-term goals and instant recognition, Rebekah teaches us to look further, to trust that small acts of faith today can plant seeds for monumental change tomorrow. She challenges us to ask, when faced with injustice, will we dare to stand? When choosing between the easy and the right, will we have the courage to follow God's call? Let Rebekah inspire you. She was not a perfect saint. She was a mother, a wife, a woman with flaws and pain. Yet it is her imperfection that makes her relatable, a mirror for us today. Her redemption lay not in avoiding mistakes, but in daring to trust God even when the path ahead was shrouded in fog. She reminds us that each of us, in any circumstance, can be a vessel of grace, shaping the world through courageous and faithful acts. This story is a call to action. Live like Rebekah, with a heart full of faith, eyes that see God's will, and hands ready to act no matter the cost. Let her legacy remind you that your sacrifices, though unrecognized by the world, are seen and cherished by God. In every difficult decision, In every moment you choose the right over the easy, you are writing your own untold story, one of courage, wisdom, and divine justice. Rebekah, with all her scars and triumphs, is proof that women of the Bible were not mere names in ancient texts. They were spiritual warriors, mothers of nations, and pioneers of redemption. Let her story light your path, urging you to act for what is right, no matter how daunting the journey. For as Rebekah proved, when you walk in grace, no challenge is too great, and no sacrifice is in vain. Thank you, friends in America, for exploring Rebekah's untold story with us. Please subscribe to the channel, share with friends, and comment your thoughts. May God bless you. Next week, we'll meet another woman of the Bible. Don't miss it.